Welcome to the Mail Day Cards YouTube channel. Big hobby news today. If you are planning to submit cards to PSA in the near future, you need to hear this before you do anything. PSA, or Professional Sports Authenticator, the largest grading card company in the hobby, just announced they are temporarily pausing new submissions for their four most popular and affordable service tiers, effective June 2nd, 2026. That's just a few days from now. Now, they're not alone. It's not just PSA. TAG has also paused submissions for all but their top two grading services, and virtually every other major grading company is currently dealing with capacity issues right now. For a lot of hobbyists, this is the first time they run into something like this. And if you're newer to collecting and you're not sure what this means, stick with me. I'm going to break it all down for you. All right, now let's start at the beginning because I want this episode to be helpful whether you submitted 100 cards for grading or you've never submitted one. This is also worth paying attention to if you don't normally grade cards, because this will impact cards across the entire hobby spectrum, not just sports cards, but also non-sports and TCG like Pokemon and One Piece. Now, I mostly collect vintage baseball cards and autograph cards, but I also have some modern, some junk wax era cards. I don't collect any non-sports or TCG, but everything is impacted right now. So let's talk a little bit about grading and why there's the backlog. So at the most basic level, grading, you submit a card to a third-party company, and they will professionally evaluate the condition, assign a numerical grade, put it in a registry, and release that card back into the world. So there are benefits to grading. You verify the card's authenticity, you're assigned an unbiased grade, it's preserved in a tamper-proof case, and in many cases, it's easier to value a card for buying, selling, trading, or for insurance purposes. Now, this last part is very important because the hobby is booming right now. It's generally easier to buy, sell, and trade slab cards because we all more easily agree on the valuation of the card. They're also protected, and you know more or less what the card is. Now, PSA is the largest grading company in the hobby, and what happens with PSA trickles down to the other grading companies. According to GemRate, the grading data tracker, PSA graded more than 19 million cards in 2025. They are on pace to exceed that by far in 2026. Now, the next highest or largest grading company is CGC. They graded just under 5 million last year. Now, they are also growing, but they're dealing with their own capacity issues right now. Okay, so what is being impacted by PSA's announcement? When you submit cards to PSA, you have to choose a service level. Those tiers are defined by the price that you pay, the maximum value of the card you submit at that tier level, and the turnaround time. Now, PSA is pausing the four lowest service tiers. That's Value Bulk, Value, Value Plus, and Value Max. Now, to submit under Value Bulk, you need to be part of their Collectors Club, which is a paid membership program, and you need to send a minimum of 50 cards. If you don't do that, you have to submit at least at the value level. So you're looking at $33 per card to submit at that level. If you're an autographed collector like me, the Value Bulk starts at $33. It's about $43, I think, for the value level, and so on. Now, what is paused? Starting on June 2nd, all four of those are paused. That means the higher tier service levels are the only ones that will be available. The regular will be $80 per card. You still have the Express, Super Express, and Walkthrough. So basically, if your card isn't worth $80 or more, it's not worth submitting to PSA. It really changes the math of what's worth submitting. If you're an autograph collector like I am, the regular service level is $104.99 per card. So what happens if you already have cards in the PSA system? None of that is impacted except for longer wait times. PSA has announced that they're extending expected wait times for basically everything that's already out there. But if your cards have been submitted or you get them in the PSA system by June 2nd, they will be in the system. PSA will process them as they get to them. But if you're submitting now, expect at least 6 months or longer before you get your cards back if you're submitting it at the base, the Value Bulk, or the value levels. What else is impacted or not impacted? If you want to buy a card on eBay and send it directly from eBay to PSA, that will not be impacted. eBay has announced that, and they have confirmed that this does not impact the value plus tier when you buy a card through eBay and submit it to PSA. The eBay Authenticity Guarantee Program, which also runs through PSA, is not affected. Finally, if you are in the PSA Collectors Club program, PSA has announced that they will extend the membership of those programs for as long as this pause in the bulk value rates is in effect. Right now, again, they're looking at 4 months, but it could be longer. Basically, however long it takes from PSA to get down from 10 million to about a 5 million card backlog, or whenever they feel comfortable opening the floodgates again. So what's causing this backlog? Quite frankly, the hobby is booming, and it's across the board. A lot of it is TCG based. All of the companies right now grade more TCG than they do sports cards, which is fine for those who collect that, but it impacts the entire market. Collectors recently announced they were going to make a $200 million investment in infrastructure, in hiring, in new slabbing machines, etc. When they made that announcement, they saw a 20% spike in submissions. So I guess people were thinking they were going to get their cards back faster. PSA said, whoa, slam on the brakes. We can't handle that much. We need to do this. So that's part of the reason why they are slowing things down. PSA also gets a ton of submissions through their partnership with GameStop. So that's what's happening. Right now, PSA is getting slammed, but it's not just PSA. As I mentioned, Tag has paused all of their lower service level tiers. CGC has recently announced that they have extended their wait times. BGS and SGC, so far as I know, have not recently announced changes, but they have been slowing things down quite a bit as well. Right now, just the demand is overwhelming all of these grading companies. Okay, so we know what's happening. PSA is pausing their lower service tiers. We know why it's happening. What are our options, and how does this impact us? Well, option one is to get your stuff in right before PSA closes their doors on the value service levels. That's actually what I'm going to do. I'm preparing a submission now. I'm going to put together about 50 cards and do one of their bulk rates because I don't know when this is coming back. They say 4 months, but is it 4 months? Will it be longer? What will the prices be when it comes back? I don't think pricing will be the same. Typically, when these companies raise prices, they set a new floor. Maybe they dial it back a little bit, but it's probably not going to be where they are today. Service times might also be longer in the future if they bring them all back. I can't predict what PSA will do. However, PSA has raised prices 2 or 3 times in the last year. They've extended timelines 3 or 4 times in the last year. So just looking at the writing on the wall, that tells me I don't think we're getting these rates back. I don't think we're getting these timelines back. So it fundamentally changes the way we grade, at least through PSA. It will also have trickle-down effects on these other companies. So option one, get your cards in, wait it out, get them back when you get them back. Option two is to wait and see what happens. If it's cards for your PC, cards you don't need slabbed right away, you're comfortable waiting, you're okay if you have to pay a little more in the future, you can wait it out. 4 months, 6 months, however long it takes. Totally up to you. No problem, especially if they're PC cards. If you're a dealer and you're looking to flip, that's up to you. It's a judgment call, really. Third option is you can submit to a higher PSA tier. Now, again, these price changes really change the calculus on which cards are worth grading. Not every card needs to be graded. I have tons of cards in my collection that aren't graded, and I'll never grade them because the economics don't work, or I just, quite frankly, don't want to store them that way or appreciate them that way. What works for you is going to be case by case. So you really have to look at that on a card by card basis to figure out, does it make sense to send it a higher tier? Do I need it back faster? Is it worth it economically? Should I wait? Your call. Next option, or option 4, you can opt to keep your cards raw. Buy, sell, trade, collect raw, however that works for you. I think we're going to see a lot more of this in the near future because, quite frankly, these grading companies can't keep up with the demand. So learning how to value and how to collect and store raw cards is going to be very important, I think, for a lot of collectors going forward, especially on the higher end cards, because one of the nice things about grading is you have that third party that says this card is in this condition based on these standards. Now, grading companies aren't always 100% consistent, not the way we would like them to be. However, it still gives us at least a starting point. So you could have, especially in vintage cards, a card in a 4 that looks completely different. 2 4s one looks night and day better than the other because of a small technical issue. How you want to value that based on eye appeal and other factors is completely up to you, but it at least gives you a starting point. When you have an ungraded card, it's really up to a lot of interpretation. So that's kind of between you and the seller to determine how you want to value that and to come to an agreement. I just think in some ways, dealing with graded cards is a little easier because you have that starting point. However, due to these backlogs, I think we're going to see a lot more people buying, selling, trading, collecting ungraded cards. It's totally fine. Finally, let's look at other alternative grading companies. So we talked about a few of them. We'll look at the big five. I'm going to actually call it big six. So right now, when you look at the gem rate statistics, they cover 5 major grading companies. From highest to smallest, you have PSA, CGC, Beckett, SGC, and Tag. I'm mostly a vintage guy, so I'm going to give you one more alternative as well. So as we're looking at these, let's start with BGS because they're one of the most well-known. They've been around kind of the longest after PSA. So they started BGS, Beckett Grading Services, started with the Beckett magazine, and then eventually got into grading. A lot of people like them as a legacy grader. They're more well known for their subgrades for modern cards, patch cards especially, because they tend to grade the thicker cards a lot better than some of the other companies do. Really good for modern. I'm starting to see a lot of headway in TCG. I think all of the grading companies are. They're well respected, I think, in the vintage space, but I think the priority in vintage is going to be PSA, SGC, and then other grading companies. So BGS was acquired within the last year by collectors, so they're part of that collector's umbrella. Are they a good company? Yes. What are their timelines and pricing like? Check their website. Look on forums and Facebook to try to find personal experiences with recent grading since the collector's acquisition. They are doing a few things to improve the flash on the label. They've recently announced that. I think that's good, but they're also seeing some backlogs. Not as big as PSA. Is it worth it? That's something that you're going to have to really look into to decide. Now, BGS is one of the other companies that does aftermarket autograph cards. So that's what I collect. So I typically will collect PSA, Beckett, and CGC for most of my autograph cards. Now, your next option will be SGC or Sports Card Guarantee. They have the black tuxedo slabs. I've actually got one of those right here. Now, SGC does not grade autographs anymore except for pack pulled autographs. This is one of their older slabs when they used to authenticate autograph cards. So that's a 1969 Topps Don Drysdale. Super cool card. Very happy with that one in my collection, but that's not an option for me now. However, SGC is really great, highly respected for vintage. There are many vintage collectors who actually prefer SGC over PSA, partly because of the tuxedo slabs, partly just because they feel they do a more consistent job with the grading. Now, SGC is one of the more affordable options. However, they have been gutted by collectors. SGC was growing. They were the biggest threat to PSA. So collectors said, if you can't beat them, buy them out. So that's what they did. They bought them out before SGC got too big, and then they gutted the company. PSA opened an office in Florida, took most of their graders and staff and moved them over to the PSA side of the house and turned SGC into what they are calling a boutique grading company, which is mostly focused on vintage cards. You'll still see people grading modern and ultra modern cards in SGC slabs. The value isn't quite there the same way as it is with PSA or some other slabs. However, it is an option. So if you have cards that aren't signed, you're looking to get them graded, I would probably, especially vintage, look to SGC as an option. Now, the next one after BGS and SGC is CGC, or Certified Guarantee Company. Now, they've been around for decades as a comic book grading company, and they are highly respected in that space. They're newer in the grading, sports cards and TCG non-sport. They're newer in that, but they've come a long way. They're growing over 100% year over year, and they also recently acquired JSA, or James Spence Authentication. So they are one of the big 3 autograph authenticators, and I love them. They're who I'm using for most of my collection right now. Again, I'm mostly autograph cards, and I'm mostly vintage cards. So that combination to me lends itself very nicely to either PSA or CGC. Lately, I found that CGC has a better value proposition. I've been able to get my cards graded at approximately half the price of what it costs for PSA, and the turnarounds have been at least half as long. So, what is the value proposition there? What do the slabs look like? I'll put a picture on the screen, but the slabs are great. Now, this is a CGC 10 Auto 10 Nolan Ryan card. Love this card. Looks great in the CGC slabs. What I love about these slabs, they're about the same size as PSA, but I think they are a little nicer. They're much clearer. They look really nice. They stack well. They store well. The only downside with CGC is they don't have the resale value yet as PSA. I think the market still responds to PSA a lot more. So when you're going with CGC, I submit my cards through their bulk submitter. It's Hawks Breaks. I'll put a link to them down in the show notes. Now, Hawks Breaks is a group submitter. You mail them to them, fill out the form on their website, mail them to Hawks Breaks. They will drive them over to the CGC corporate headquarters. He just lives a few minutes away. And then you get your cards back. You don't have as much insight because you don't have your own personal account, but it's a little faster and a lot cheaper than doing it direct. And I've had great results so far. I've submitted several hundred cards in the last year, most of them dual grade autographs. The nice thing about CGC that you can't do with many other grading companies is you can submit a minimum card and autograph grade. And if it is authentic, but it doesn't reach that grade, it comes back graded authentic. So this Nolan Ryan came back as a 1010, for example. If I said, hey, I want a minimum card grade of 9 and an auto grade of 10, and let's say the card grade came back as an 8 and the auto was a 10, then it would be graded as authentic auto 10. So really nice to have that flexibility. I've used that a lot. Might slow things down a touch, but in my opinion, that's worth it as a collector because, I don't want a card that if I miss a little flaw in there, it comes back as a 3 or a 4. I'd rather it just say authentic. That said, CGC is also dealing with backlogs. They're getting the same kind of surge. CGC is very big in the TCG market. Now, they have grown tremendously in the last year. They are actually growing. They're hiring. They're adding more space. They're adding more slabbing machines. So they're working through those bottlenecks. But according to Mark Hawkins, who runs Hawks Breaks, they have about a 2 million card backlog. So they have extended their turnaround times from 90 to 120 days, and their economy has gone from 45 to 65. Now, these are business days as well. So they're not closed and they're not shutting off the spigot. Just understand that there are backlogs. But, I find it to be a very affordable and, I don't know, to me, it's worth it over PSA, especially when these bulk tiers are being shut down. So there are two more options. I'm going to cover one more that discusses more of the vintage card market. You can do modern as well. It's Mike Baker authenticated. Here's a picture or a copy of that slab. Now, I like these slabs. They're kind of comparable to CGC, not exactly in the shape, but in terms of clarity and attractiveness of the slab itself. They're relatively new in the grading scene, but they are very well known for their very accurate vintage grading and for the eye appeal stickers that indicate which cards graded by other companies are a high example or exceptional eye appeal for that grade. So yes, we have entered the graders grading the graders stage of the hobby, which is a little crazy, but it is what it is. Okay, finally, we have Tag Grading. Now, Tag is a newer AI-based grading company. They only deal with TCG and modern sports cards. They do not deal with vintage. Because they don't grade vintage cards, I don't have any direct experience with them. But as I mentioned earlier, they've paused their basic and standard services in May of this year. And right now, I'm looking at their price tag. I'll put it on the screen. Their priority tier is $149 per card, and there's only limited space available. Their walkthrough is $299 per card with limited spots available. So it really needs to be worth it to grade with Tag right now. I don't know how long they are backlogged or how long they're going to have paused those service tiers. They haven't made that announcement. So I know Tag has been growing exponentially lately, and they are working on their operations as well. Hopefully it will be temporary because they need to keep that momentum going. So look, I'm not anti-PSA. I understand every company has a place in the hobby, but PSA drives the market. So I like seeing Tag and CGC and NBA, I want to see these companies grow. I think competition is good for the hobby. I think it's good for us to have options, especially when a company like PSA gets so big that they can't handle the entirety of their submissions. So here's what I would do. If you have certain types of cards, they will grade better with other companies. Tag, again, is going to be more modern, or TCG, but you have to go to a super high service level. If you collect autograph cards like me, you're looking at PSA, BGS, or CGC. I use CGC right now. I wouldn't be surprised if we see some changes to them in the near future. They are backlogged. Hopefully, it will just mean longer turnaround times, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see some pricing changes. I don't have any inside information. I'm just looking at the way the wind is blowing right now. And right now, every company is facing such demand that they probably need to raise prices to either slow demand or to invest in infrastructure. So the other thing to do is look at your card. Does it need to be graded? Does the math work? Is it for a PC card? Does it have to be in a specific brand holder? There are many people who only collect PSA cards because of the PSA registry or because of the values that PSA bring on the secondary market. However, I'm kind of slagnostic. It doesn't matter to me so long as it's a reputable company and I like the card. Now, again, I mostly collect autograph cards, so I'm sticking mostly within those big three companies, mostly because, well, big four, because SGC used to grade autographs back in the day. So I do have some autograph cards in SGC slabs. Now, the other thing to do is to pay attention to turnaround times, pricing, etc. Make sure you follow submission instructions exactly on the website, because you don't want to send it in to find out you did something wrong and then have 4-6 months go by and then have to start that process over again. Pro tip, if you are mailing cards in for grading, I take high quality front and back photos of every card that I submit. I had a card damaged by PSA one time. I didn't have a high quality photo, so I couldn't say to them, hey, this card came back damaged. So I had to eat that one. I lost on what it could have been. I broke even on the card, but I could have made a lot of money on it. So that was a very unfortunate thing. So now what I do, I take high quality front and back photos. I drop them into a folder on my computer, and then I video record myself packaging that box. If it's a high value box, I will actually double box it. So I will bubble wrap the cards and put them all as they're supposed to be, put them in a box, put the label on the box, and then I put that one inside another box with another label on it. Why? Because if that outer box gets damaged, or if somebody tries to get into it, there's another layer there stopping it. The other label on there, it's just in case something happens, they could pull it out and say, oh, well, let's drop it in the mail. Will it happen? I don't know. But to me, it's an extra few seconds of insurance that costs me very little, but it gives me peace of mind. I also insure packages going out. That's a topic for another day. All right. Let's take a big step back. What is this telling us about the hobby? Right now, the hobby is booming. Last year, PSA graded over 19 million cards. They're going to exceed well over 20 million this year, if not more. And that's even with them pausing submissions. They have 10 million cards in the backlog. If you're sending in today, unless you're sending at a higher tier level, if you're selling at any of these bulk rates, especially the lower tiers, you might not get them back until next year. So that's just where it is. The secondary market right now is strong. It's really what's driving all of this. So what are we as hobbyists going to see? All these companies are dealing with capacity issues. That doesn't mean new graded cards aren't entering the market. They are, but they're not entering as fast as many people want them to. So a lot of dealers at big shows, they're scrambling to get slabs. So many dealers are going to have to either pay up to get slabs from collectors. They're going to have to buy them. They won't be able to get them at the bulk rates like they have been. So they'll have to pay more for slabs, or they won't be able to get bulk discounts from other sellers. So they're going to be paying closer to retail, which means they can't pass on those savings to you, which means we're going to see probably prices increase on the secondary market. We're also going to see more cards being sold raw or ungraded. So again, this is where your education comes into it. You, as a collector, if you can't find the card that you want in a slab, you'll have to look at, how do I grade this myself? How do I look at the condition? What can I equate it to? Just because you think this card might be a 6 if it were graded, let's say we have like a vintage 1960 Mickey Mantle card and you wanted to get that graded, you could say, okay, well, if it's graded and it's worth $750, I don't know what it's worth in a 6, maybe $1,000. Let's just say 1,000. Okay, well, if it's graded in a 6 for $1,000, do I pay 1,000 for it raw? Many collectors will. They just want a nice copy. Others might say, yeah, well, I'm going to have to pay to grade it. And right now it's going to cost me, say, close to $100 to grade it. And it's going to take several months. So I want to do a little discount based on that. Or if I think it's a 6, but it's actually, if it gets graded and comes back a 5, now you overpaid for that card. So this is going to be something where you have to learn to trust your ability to grade an ungraded card or assess the condition. You're also going to have to learn how to negotiate and have that back and forth with the seller. Not every seller is going to even deal with negotiations. Some will. Some will say, I don't care what you think the grade is. Here's the book value, or here's how I'm valuing it. And then you have to go off of that. So it's really a lot of give and take, and it's learning how to do those negotiations. The other thing is learning to love ungraded cards. I have a lot of them in my collection, especially lower value cards that they don't make economic sense for grading. I don't want to deal with the storage that comes with slabs because slabs take up a lot of space. So learning to love those cards and have them in your collection. So here's my synopsis. If your collecting depends on buying cards, getting them graded, and move them quickly, that's changing right now. Your hobby will need to adapt, especially if you're a reseller. But if your hobby depends on finding the cards you love, the hunt, the history, the stories behind the cards, then this pause probably isn't the end of the world. Not every card needs to go in a slab. Some of my favorite cards in my collection are raw. I have a ton of them that I just love looking at. They'll never be worth slabbing, and I'm okay with that. I don't need to have it in a slab to enjoy it. Now, this is a good time to really step back and assess your hobby. Do you need to grade certain slab cards? Do they need to be slabbed? If not, no big deal. If so, think about the value proposition. Does it need to be in a PSA slab? Can it go to an alternative grading company? Do you just want it authenticated? You have a lot of options. And right now, being flexible, I think, is going to be the key to enjoying your hobby. So that's what I'm doing with my collection right now. With PSA, on the lower end, the value proposition just isn't there. So I'm not using them. I'm doing one last bulk submission. I'm going to get it out tomorrow or today. And then I probably won't have those cards back for a year. After that, I don't know the next time I'll submit with PSA. So most of my cards are going to continue going to CGC. I'm happy with that. I love their slabs. The value proposition for me that's where it is. So here we are. This is what's going to be. For the next few months, I think we're going to see a lot of pressure on these grading companies, and I think we're going to continue seeing a lot of demand in the sports card and the non-sports and TCG space. It is what it is. Love this hobby. Be willing to adapt. Be willing to change your direction. Buy deals when you can find them. And there you are. I hope this episode helped you understand a little bit about what's going on. I'll put links to everything in the show notes. And until next time, happy hunting, and I hope your next mail day is a good one. Thank you.